Hi everyone, my name is Meredith Moore and I am here to talk to you today about UncommonVoice, which is this new crowdsourced data set of dysphonic speech. This work was done via collaboration between Arizona State University, Drake University, and University of California, Santa Barbara, and this is being presented for INTERSPEECH 2020. So with UncommonVoice, basically we have UncommonVoice was created with the goal of improving the accessibility of voice-based technologies. We have collected data from 57 speakers with varying degrees of dysphonia. These speakers were asked to do a survey of demographics and some information about themselves and their voice. And then we asked them to record themselves speaking 4 different tasks. So we have non-words, read speech, image descriptions, and a second round of non-words to be able to measure any change in voice between the data recording process. This is a web-based data collection tool, which basically allowed us to just send a link out to individuals with voice disorders, and they could collect their data from the comfort of their own home. And most importantly, it is freely and publicly available for researchers to be able to do research on. So that's a high level overview of what UncommonVoice is about. So the motivation of UncommonVoice was to improve the representation of individuals with voice disorders by basically building a data set of speech that represents them, and then also improve the accessibility of voice-based technologies. So the idea is that with this data being available, some of the voice technologies that exist today could be made more accessible. And also we're really hoping this data set will fuel the development of voice assistive technologies. So technologies to help people who are not easily understood or not entirely intelligible be better understood by others. So we recruited participants through a collaboration with the National Spasmodic Dysphonia Association in the United States. And we utilized their social media and email presence primarily to recruit. This is a group of about 4,000 individuals across the United States that have this disorder or are supportive of this disorder. So it was really great. They're super helpful in getting the number of respondents that we did. So the data collection system is now stored at cubicvoice.com. If you want to contribute your voice, or if you know somebody who has a voice disorder who you think might want to contribute their voice, Cubic Voice is still collecting speech. And this data collection system facilitated the recording and was compatible with many configurations. The one combination that it was not compatible with was mobile, so anything with iOS, so iPads and iPhones. This is one of the limitations of our design, is that we were unable to record from a browser on iOS devices. But for pretty much any other configuration, you were able to record. The first step was we asked these individuals to take a survey. So here are the kind of questions that we asked in that survey, getting some basic demographic information, asking them if they had a voice disorder. And then if they did say they had a voice disorder, we asked them to elaborate. So we asked them some common questions. Since the majority of the speakers in this data set so far are individuals with spasmodic dysphonia, there's certain questions that are pertinent to these individuals, like if they receive Botox injections as a treatment or not. And since Botox injections modulate the voice and change how the intelligibility of their voice, it's important to know when their last injection was, and if they normally receive injections. And then also we had some self-reported quality and clarity values. So had them rate their quality of their voice today, as far as whether it was breathy, whether it was creaky, or whether it was relatively modal / normal, and then also a difficulty of speaking. So this different speech tasks that we had were, the first round was non-words. So we're asking them to do the corner vowels here, as well as a shortened DDK rate to get some articulatory precision metrics. And then we had them do read speech. So we randomly selected 10-minute sentences, and we also included the sentences that are necessary to calculate the CAPE-V, which is an intelligibility metric. After they went through this read speech, that makes up the majority of the data set, is this read speech section. We also had them go through 3 different image descriptions just to get some spontaneous speech in case you wanted to compare any of the prosodic differences between read speech and image descriptions. These images are pulled from the MS COCO data set. And then we did a 4th round of non-words. So it was basically repeating the exact same non-words they did in step 1. However, just at the end, so we could measure / control for any changes in their voice over the period of data collection. So here's what this looks like. You can see for task 1, we have, well, it's both task 1 and 4, so that's why it says 4 here. These are sustained phonations. So the prompt would be something like, please hold ah as in pot for 5 seconds. We had this countdown clock over here that would start at 5, and then once you hit record, it would start counting down from 5 to 0, and then it would automatically stop recording. It's worth mentioning this black box up here. This data set was collected to be both an audio and visual data set. However, in order to protect the identities of our speakers, we are only releasing the audio part of the data set. The visual part of the data set will remain within Arizona State University and the other universities that collaborated on this project. So that's what that is. If they chose to have their video on, their video would appear up in this black box. This is what it looked like for read speech. So basically the prompt that they were asked to speak is in this box. So never happier in my life is what they would say here. They would tap to begin the recording, and then once they were done, they would also tap to end the recording. Individuals were given the option to skip any prompt they didn't want to do. As per IRB guidelines, we were not forcing them to go through this entire thing, although most of them did choose to do the entire data set. This is what the image description task looked like. So they were shown an image and asked to spontaneously describe it in a few sentences. There were instructions provided for them as to how to complete these as well. So they could watch a video explaining how to go through the data collection process. We tried to make it as easy as possible. So some quick results. So we ended up with 4,683 speech recordings and counting. This is an ongoing recording process, so this number is only going to grow. However, we're releasing this as a V1. If we get enough speech recordings in the future, we'll release a V2 as well, or VX, whatever that number grows to. And in this V1, we had 57 individuals. It equates to about 9 hours of speech. So in spasmodic dysphonia, there's a bias towards older females having the voice disorder. So this bias is represented in our data as well. So we have a 77% female and 23% male. 84% of these individuals have a voice disorder. We also included some control speakers. So there are some control voices that you can compare to. And then 37.5% of those with a voice disorder do receive a treatment. So their voice has been modulated a little bit by Botox, but you can go in and we have the dates of their last Botox injection recorded. And 86% of the speakers are native English speakers. Over here, you can see this graph. This shows a distribution of the files, the number of files. So you can see that the most files that we have represent a tight or creaky voice, followed by a combination of tight and breathy. This is a possibility for people with spasmodic dysphonia. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details here. And then followed by breathy. And modal means that they had a voice disorder, but their voice sounded pretty quote unquote normal for the time being. So previous markers of spasmodic dysphonia, there's been some acoustic markers that you can calculate. So things like the CPP, the cepstral peak prominence, or the signal periodicity, or things like jitter, shimmer, and fundamental frequency. These have all been used as predictors for spasmodic dysphonia previously. And this data set could be used as a way to evaluate these metrics as markers of SD or of other voice disorders as well. Although, as I said, primarily this is an SD data set for now. We would like to have it be inclusive of all voice disorders. However, we know that for now it's going to be used primarily as a spasmodic dysphonia data set. So here is two spectrograms. Basically, this spectrogram up here is of a control speaker's voice, and this spectrogram down here is of a individual with a voice disorders voice. They're holding a vowel here. And you can see that with spasmodic dysphonia, there's all of these basically these little, the signal is disturbed throughout it. You can see those little peaks there. And that's very indicative of how their voice sounds as well. So we decided to do a little bit of an analysis on this data set. So we wanted to look and see, we wanted to perform a similar intelligibility analysis as we have done in previous work. So we predicted that dysphonic speech would have a higher word error rate when passed through an automatic speech recognition system than controlled speech would. And that was based on some of our previous work that we've done that's been presented in INTERSPEECH previously. So we basically took control speech and the dysphonic speech from this data set and ran it through an automatic speech recognition system. So you can see that the control speech, the ASR system got the control speech right more often, or it predicted the words correctly more often than dysphonic speech. And also there were fewer substitutions, insertions, deletions, and generally a lower word error rate for the control speech than dysphonic speech. So basically, dysphonic speech is not recognized as well as control speech by automatic speech recognition systems. We also decided to kind of look at some of the acoustic metrics that I showed you on the previous page, previous slide, about and compare them to the intelligibility metrics that we got from our the last slide. So basically, we wanted to look and see how the intelligibility was correlated with duration. So the two features that ended up being the most correlated with the intelligibility, or the automatic speech recognition word error rate, which here we're using as a proxy for intelligibility, which we realize has some weaknesses. But the two features that are most correlated with that intelligibility is the duration, as well as the captural peak prominence. So you can see the Pearson correlation coefficient of 0.75 and 0.6 here. So we also decided to run this algorithm called the goodness of pronunciation algorithm on our data. So this is basically a scale where the closer to 0, the better, the more easy it was to be understood, or the better the pronunciation. So here we took a couple different slices of the data. So here you can see there's self-reported, control, normal, breathy, creaky, or combined. So this is basically, if they're control speakers, the goodness of pronunciation is pretty bunched up here. For normal MINT individuals who had a voice disorder who rated their voice as having a normal quality, and that means that it was as close to a somebody who didn't have a voice disorder. So you can see that they have a little bit less goodness. Their goodness of pronunciation is smaller. And then breathy is also a little bit similar variation here. Creaky, we have a pretty wide variation of goodness of pronunciation. And then a combined breathy and creaky is an even wider. Then over here, we did the exact same thing. So we wanted to look at the goodness of pronunciation, but we correlated it with the self-reported vocal clarity. So this is when they were saying on a scale from 1 to 4, my voice is either not clear at all or very clear. And this had a very clear correlation with the goodness of pronunciation. So when they said their voice was not clear at all, you see that it's a very wide spread of data, whereas if they said their voice is very clear, the goodness of pronunciation is much better. So most importantly, how do you access this data? So the data is stored, or go to uncommonvoice.org basically. Here I have an overview of the data set, and then I have a download procedure that you can follow. So basically the download procedure includes emailing me with the subject line Uncommon Voice download, and in the body specify your name, the name of your institution, and a quick synopsis of what you hope to achieve with this data set, and I will send you a link to download the data set. Basically is how it's going to work. Like I said, this is free, and I can't wait to see what the researchers at INTERSPEECH, or just generally speech researchers, can do with this data set. I really hope it fuels the development of new voice-assisted technologies, and it helps lower the barrier of access for individuals with voice disorders to voice-based technologies. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.